Welcome to today's InsideSales.com webinar, 7 Salesforce reports every inside sales manager should be pulling, featuring Mark Littlefield, our Senior Product Manager at InsideSales.com. While we're waiting for everybody to jump online here, we've got a quick video clip we'd like to share with you.
Hi, my name is Stephen Lang, and we're going to take a look at what my day looks like as an SDR at Vandelay Industries. Last Friday, my manager, Katrina Sanford, kicked off a week-long SMB Blitz campaign. Our goals? Every day she wants each of us to get 89 dials, 12 connected calls, and 3 appointments set. A bit of a stretch, but I'm going to show you how the InsideSales.com product platform accelerates my work by making my day more visible, productive, and effective. It starts with NeuralView, which tells me which leads I'm most likely to contact and close. Then I can use the Power Dialer to most efficiently communicate with those leads. Vision helps me track my engagement with those leads by monitoring their email and web engagement. And finally, Power Standings helps our sales team motivate each other and track our own goals. When these products all work side by side, I call more, engage more, track more, and more importantly, close more. Let's get started. The first thing I do is head to Salesforce to get things set up for Katrina's SMB Blitz campaign. I need a new voicemail, one that's tailored to the SMB Blitz and recorded in my own voice. That way, I don't have to repeat myself every time I get an answering machine. Instead, I just hit Leave Voicemail, and the system leaves my pre-recorded message. I do the same thing with email. Set up a pre-made SMB Blitz email, tailored from templates created by my manager. Now I'm ready to hit the phone and start dialing. In the background, NeuralView is prioritizing all my leads so I get the best ones based on likelihood to contact them this morning and based on their likelihood to set an appointment with me. On my browser, I see these likelihoods as a neural score given to each lead. My first one has a neural score of 95, which means this is a hot lead. I call, she answers, we set an appointment. Not a bad way to start the day. I log the call in Power Dialer, which saves the lead in Salesforce, and I'm ready to make the next call. I click Neural Next to get my next prioritized lead. That lead doesn't answer, but that's okay. Remember that voicemail and email I made this morning? I just click Leave Voicemail to leave that pre-recorded message and Send Email to send my pre-made email. Easy. I keep this going through the morning. Rinse and repeat. Close to lunchtime, my coworker Henry sends me a throwdown challenge. There on the bottom left is my Power Standings app. Normally it shows my standings in the office and my key metrics, but Henry's throwdown challenge has taken it over. He thinks he can set more appointments than me. Throwdown accepted. Right after that, I get an email from Katrina. She used Salesforce reporting to analyze the hour-by-hour results of our last campaign. It says that the 12 p.m. hour was the most successful time to contact leads. I eat a quick lunch and am back at my desk by 12 p.m. to take advantage of this. Enjoy your luxurious lunch, Henry. With most reps gone for lunch, I receive an immediate response pop-up. Someone just filled out a web form on our site and Power Dialer let me know. These leads are the best. They call in, I answer, another appointment set, and I'm up another one on Henry. I'm ready for my next call, but I get a Vision notification. Remember that person I left a voicemail and email with this morning? He's just clicked through my email link to our website. I just press the click to call button directly from the Vision notification, and after we talk, I've set another appointment. And I keep this going through the afternoon. At 6 p.m. I get a Power Standings toast that I'm the new leader in appointments set. I don't just beat Henry, I'm the best on our team. I glance up at our leaderboard TVs and discover that I actually lead the team in dials, connects, and appointments. Pretty great start to this campaign. Katrina's hour-by-hour report shows that contacts after 6 p.m. are very low, but 9 a.m. is the second best time for contacts, so I'm done for the day. But I'll be back at 9 a.m. tomorrow, ready to get the best leads and defend my top spot.
All right, thanks for watching that video clip while we let everybody get logged in. I'm really excited to share with you guys the Sales Acceleration Podcast. You can see the link below. You should jump in there and subscribe. We've got Gabe Larson and Steve Ayer really digging into the everyday use of sales acceleration. They're bringing in some extraordinary guests, so check that out. So how will this work today? This webinar should last about 30 to 45 minutes. Go ahead and throw your questions into the Q&A console, and we'll get to those questions at the end. Feel free to use the hashtag InsideSalesWebinar if you find something that is interesting that you want to share out via social. And just know that this webinar will be available on demand using the same link you logged in with today in about an hour and a half. We'll also send you a link back to it tomorrow. All right, now I'm going to introduce today's speakers, but while we're waiting, why don't you just let us know where you're from today and let Mark know that you're here. We're excited to have you. Mark Littlefield is going to be our main presenter today, and he is our Senior Product Manager at InsideSales.com. He is one of those brainiacs, and we're super excited to have him on our team. And he'll jump on here in just a second and take over. We'll also have some Q&A at the end from Adam Henry, our Technical Success Manager. So if you've got questions, stick around to the end, and Adam will take care. So now I'll just pass it over to Mark Littlefield.
Hello everyone, my name is Mark Littlefield. I'm the Senior Product Manager over our communications platform, and today I'm going to be talking to you about efforts versus results and really kind of challenging you around what are you tracking. Are you tracking the right things, or are you tracking things that don't actually matter to the bottom line? I really want to, as we go through this discussion, have you think about a couple different things. Can you answer these core questions? Who should you be working with right now to have a conversation? How many times should you be following up with a prospect? When should you stop calling a prospect? When should you give up? What reps are dialing but are actually not being effective? And then finally, what are your peak answer times for inbound phone calls? Thinking about that today, can you answer that right now using the data that you have available? Most organizations would say that they can't. So we're going to spend some time talking about the top 5 common mistakes when it comes to reporting, the top 5 metrics that you should be tracking, and finally I'll introduce you to 7 of the top reports that we consider to be most effective for sales organizations. Starting with the top 5 mistakes. I've had a really interesting opportunity as a senior product manager at Inside Sales to really spend time with users and to really figure out what organizations are tracking that makes them effective or not effective. The number one mistake that I see as I go around meeting with customers is measuring rep success by dials. I have the unique opportunity to meet with hundreds of sales teams every year and kind of just understand how they track their data and how they work. And again, what I found is that dials is oftentimes the biggest thing that they want to run reports on, but that doesn't actually show whether or not reps are being effective. You're not hiring your reps to place more phone calls. You're hiring them to have conversations that ultimately lead to sales. And so focusing on the dial metric, although important, should not be core to your reporting focus. For example, what I have seen time and time again is a manager comes in and they give a really high goal for their sales team. They say, hey, you need to place 150 or 200 phone calls in a day. And the sales manager thinks that that's going to somehow equal more appointments or more conversations, and that's not always true. But your reps will try their best to do that, and so they'll increase their dials pretty significantly. However, what we find frequently with that is that as dials increase, your actual talk time per day decreases. So in the example here, you can see that as dials increases, the talk time actually took a really big dive. While you think that dials equals more appointments or more conversations, the opposite can be true if you're not setting realistic goals. Furthermore, what we found is that reps, when they have high dial quotas, actually spend less time waiting for prospects to answer. So in this example, we can see that the reps, at the same time their talk time decreased, the average time that they waited for a prospect to answer actually also decreased. Again, focusing on dials can really have detrimental effects. It's an important metric, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more, but it needs to be used in the right place. The second mistake that I commonly see is that list completion equals success, and that just simply isn't true. Many organizations have policies that if you get through the list, you're done. You've finished the day and you can go home or you can go do something else that might be a little bit more desirable than placing phone calls on a list. That's, again, encouraging really negative behavior, and we want to make sure that we're avoiding that. The third mistake that I have frequently seen is measuring success by the number of contacts. Now, we talked a little bit earlier about dials and how dials aren't a good way of measuring success. Contacts are similar in that way. The quality of a contact is obviously substantially more important than the quantity. So here we can see 2 reps who have contacts. After dials, this is one of the most common mistakes and is one of the easiest ones to fall into. Like we talked about, dials aren't necessarily a good metric to be tracking as a core metric. You need to measure, was the contact the correct person, and was it actually a meaningful conversation? If you get a hold of the right person every time, but they always brush you off, you probably shouldn't encourage reps to call those people anymore. On paper, it might look really good. You might have a really high connect rate, but it doesn't matter unless people are actually willing to engage with you. Fourth, using reports only as an accountability tool. Reports obviously are super useful in looking at reps and trying to identify which reps are good and which reps are bad, but you should be leveraging the reports inside of Salesforce to really drill in and understand what is working from a strategy standpoint and what is not. The fifth mistake that I commonly see is mixing call dispositions and lead statuses. It's a very common mistake that people make, and they're very different, and making this mistake will really jeopardize the value of your data. So let's kind of review the differences. So a lead status summarizes where the lead is currently in your pipeline. Lead statuses are not transactional and should not change unless the lead is progressing or regressing, or it's going in the opposite direction. If you mix your lead statuses and call dispositions, what you end up with is a situation where you have hundreds of lead statuses that become transactional rather than just showing the progress of the lead in the sale. If you're collecting data this way, you're skewing your reports and losing out on historical interaction data. So for example, the mistake that I commonly see is this. On call 1, you place a phone call and the person doesn't pick up. So you have them in the lead status of new, no answer. On call 2, they pick up the phone, but they're not quite interested, so you switch it to the lead status of working, answered. And on call 3, you do working, left message because they didn't answer the phone. And then on call 4, working, no answer. You end up with all these different lead statuses for the status of new and the outcomes of all the calls, the status of working and all the outcomes of potential calls. You get all these different lead statuses, and there's tons of them, and then what ends up happening is your reps don't properly disposition their leads because there's so many lead statuses and they're trying to move really quick that they just don't pay attention. The difference between a lead status and a lead disposition is pretty essential. On call 1, it's in the status of new, and they make a phone call and they didn't answer you. You don't disposition the lead status, you disposition the call disposition. On call 2, they picked up the phone and we had a correct contact. By doing the call dispositions rather than the lead status, we can truly understand exactly where the lead is in the pipeline and the effort that we're taking on it. For example, in call 3 and call 4, the lead status did not change because my call dispositions, I didn't get actually a hold of the person, so nothing progressed on the lead. That's important for reporting. We've talked about the mistakes. I want to talk about the top 5 KPIs that you should be tracking for your SDR team. Number 1, correct contacts. Getting a hold of the right person and not just the gatekeeper. A lot of organizations, they track contact rate or connect rate. But again, we want to know if we're talking to the right people, not just that we're talking to someone. Although the connect rate is really important, again, we really want to talk to that right individual. Second, we want to measure talk time related to correct contacts. So it's not just enough to know how many correct contacts did you have. Were you able to actually engage with those people? Were you able to have conversations with them that were meaningful? I worked with a customer who's having issues with a few of their reps. They felt their reps might not be spending their time really on the phones. So what we did is we evaluated their talk time per call disposition or per call result, and found that reps were spending way too long talking to gatekeepers without being able to get beyond to the right individual or the right prospect. So talk time is a good indicator to track, but not simply by itself. What you really want to do is track the total talk time spent talking to the right people or to their correct contacts. If a rep has a very high talk time, but it's not with decision makers, then you probably need to evaluate that rep and see how they're spending their time. The third KPI that you should be tracking is appointments set. And appointment sets really give you an idea of which reps are having conversations that are actually progressing the opportunity. You want to look at your reps who have high talk time. You want to analyze your reps who have high quantities of appointments set and start really digging into their day. How many calls are they placing? How much talk time are they having on average? And kind of frame that up to be the guideline for the rest of your reps. And again, through reporting in Salesforce, you can do just that. Fourth, I talked a little bit earlier about dials and how dials shouldn't be a main focus for you. But dials are really a pretty core KPI in the long run, but they shouldn't be a focus. You should never pay reps based on how many dials they make, nor should you actively encourage reps to be the rep with the highest number of dials for the day. You should still track dials though, just don't make it a focus. If you find a rep who's having an okay amount of conversations in a given day, but has very low dials, then you can use dial quotas to help them boost their conversations. But don't go overboard on dial quotas. Remember that you want to have them talking and not just dialing. Don't just set dial goals because you want to be able to show the effort of reps. What I commonly see with our gamification platform is that people will create leaderboards and they'll put them around the office, and again, they'll focus on the dial metric and they'll have all these different people competing to have the most dials, But again, when we focus on dials, what we typically see is a decrease in conversations and a decrease in overall talk time because you've motivated them for a behavior that isn't actually what you want them to be doing. The fifth KPI that you should be tracking is lead conversions. Salesforce makes it really easy to run really meaningful reports and really drill in to see what leads you're actually converting. For example, you can run reports around which lead sources are converting, leads from which countries are converting. But our product also helps you get a little bit more information out of the Salesforce conversion reports. Our product can help you answer questions like, how many times should I call a prospect before giving up? How many times on average should I call leads from a certain lead source before moving on and putting them back to marketing? So there's a number of things that we can do to help you track this. I want to introduce you to the top 7 insightful reports that we can help you create inside of Salesforce to really help start answering these questions and really focusing your organization on those top KPIs. The reports I'm going to share today are applicable to both current customers of inside sales and then anyone else in the inside sales industry. Of course, our product helps you track them a little bit better. Each of the reports I'll be going are available to all of our customers at no extra charge. To get these reports, you need to visit the App Exchange and download the latest package. And then if you look in the reports folder called Sales Acceleration Reports, you'll find them there. Your account manager can help you with any questions you might have regarding the reports. You can also customize them to meet your needs. So I had to pick my top 7 favorite reports. There's a number of reports in there, but I wanted to spend some time talking about 7 specific reports. Before we jump into the reports, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about correct context. We've talked about that a little bit. I want to just emphasize that a little bit more, which is make sure you're tracking the effort around correct context. Again, that is talking to the right person. You don't want to be just tracking connects, and all the reports we're going to talk about today are around correct contact reporting. The data feedback loop is really important to understand as you start analyzing reports. Most organizations, when they're a little bit younger to reporting, they start by analyzing effort. What are my reps doing? Are they placing lots of phone calls? Then they go to another degree, which is the effect of that effort. Are we having conversations? So you then look at, okay, are those conversations leading to appointments? You analyze all that data. You make changes to how your lists function, your dial lists function, or your business strategies, and then you kind of repeat that process. So you make a change, you start analyzing the effort, what are the effects, the results, and so forth. So it's a constant process of just kind of understanding and making business changes. The first report I want to introduce you to today is the correct contact by time of day report. And what this report shows is in the prospect's time, when are you getting the most correct contacts or speaking to the right person? Our Seek-List technology will help you prioritize your day to make sure that you're always calling people at the right hour that's most optimized for your prospect. So for example, at 10 a.m., according to this data, we can see that our correct contact rate is at 70%. And we can see that our correct contact rate, the green bar, goes down throughout the day and towards the afternoon really starts getting a little bit lower. Using this report, we can create a seek list that optimizes your outreach strategy so that you're always calling prospects at 10 a.m. because that's when you're going to get a hold of them. The second report I want to introduce you to is correct contact by dial attempt. So we just talked about calling people at the right time, but who should you be calling? That's what this is designed to answer. So again, thinking of correct contacts being our focus, we can see on the first dial attempt, or the bars on the far left of the report, we can see that on our first dial attempt, the correct contact rate is nearly 90%. And as we place more phone calls, as you might expect, our correct contact rate goes down. Using this information, again, you can go back to your seek list. You can optimize your seek list to not call people if they've been called too many times. Using this information, what I would do is I would go to my seek list and I would prioritize my day. So I'm always calling the people with 1 to 2 dial attempts first. And then the people between 3 and 6 dial attempts, it's pretty much the same. And so I might not actually sort by dial attempt there. So the first report we talked about is when you should be calling. And the second report we just talked about is who you should be calling based on how many times you've already called them. The third report I want to talk about is the conversion rate by lead source. We talked about the conversion rate being an essential metric to be tracking, and our product can help answer some questions around how much effort you are spending and how much effort you should be spending on leads from a given lead source. So this report is designed to answer the question, how many dials does it take to convert a lead into a qualified opportunity? So for example, we can see that the average dials for the print leads, or the column on the far left of the report, is around 7 dials. And then what we can do is we can analyze the conversion rate for a lead source. So for example, for the print lead source, the conversion rate is almost nothing. What this indicates is that you're spending a lot of effort on a lead source that has a very low conversion rate. I've spent a lot of time with customers trying to dig in and understand their data a little bit better to help optimize their sales process. As I've done that, what I have frequently found is that reps have this perception that a certain lead source is worth a lot, and it's the best lead source that there's there. And in actuality, it's a lead source that doesn't convert well. Maybe those are leads that are nice, and maybe you can set appointments with them, but they don't actually convert, they don't actually close. We want to focus on the right lead sources and put the right amount of effort. In this example, if you look at the referral lead source, on average, we're spending a little bit over 6 dials, but the conversion rate is very high. So I'm going to go to my seek list and I'm going to prioritize my referral leads with less than 6 dial attempts because those are the leads that will close. The fourth report I want to talk about is correct contact percentage by reps. And really what this is designed to do is tell you whether or not your reps are able to get a hold of the right person. And this report is done through percentages. So we see 2 reps here. The rep on the bottom has about a 45% correct contact rate, and the rep on the top has a contact rate around 25%. Now, I will say that you can't just go off percentages because we were just looking at the percent of all calls that were correct contact, but were you able to have meaningful conversations? And the next report is really designed to help answer that. So again, we have 2 reps here, and this is designed to say whether or not reps are having meaningful conversation with their prospects. So we have the 2 reps. The green bar is the average talk time in minutes, and then the blue line shows the total quantity of calls. So the rep on the left has a very high average talk time, almost 20 minutes. And the rep on the right, their talk time is a lot lower. If you notice the blue bar indicates that the rep on the left has had a lower quantity, only about 30 phone calls. And the rep on the right has had about a little bit over 50. What this means is that the rep on the right, although they're able to get past the gatekeeper, they're able to have correct contacts, they're unable to get their prospects to engage. They're not having meaningful conversations. Whereas the rep on the left is having meaningful conversations. They're not having as many conversations, but the ones that they have are more valuable. So you want to use the reports kind of together to really understand which reps are having the most correct contacts and then who's having meaningful correct contacts. The 6th report I want to talk about is immediate response results. If you're on this webinar, then you're probably pretty familiar with our industry-leading research around immediate response and how that impacts both your likelihood to contact and likelihood to convert or close leads. This information alone has been the driving force behind the success of many, many inside sales organizations across the world. We don't expect you to necessarily take our word for it, however, you can validate whether or not immediate response makes a difference to you and your industry through reports inside of Salesforce using the immediate response results report. And this report will tell you based on your average response time whether or not that's impacting your contact rate and whether or not that impacts your conversion rate and ultimately your closes. So we can see that here. Again, we're looking for correct contacts. In this case, it is the green bar. And then the orange bar shows every other call result that's not necessarily desirable. And then finally, we have the blue line that shows the total number of records that met that criteria. So for example, in under 5 minutes, you have a correct contact rate of a little bit over 90%, which is awesome. And if you wait longer, if you wait to 5 to 10 minutes, it goes down to 80% and then to 60% and so forth. So the longer you wait, according to this data, the less likely you are to actually get a hold of the person. And then the blue line shows how well you're doing at it. Of all the leads that you had, you only called 25 in less than 5 minutes, but the contact rate is so high. So really what you'd hope to see is that blue line is kind of going the other direction, where in under 5 minutes, you're responding to almost all of them. This report is really designed to show you whether or not immediate response works for you and your industry. The 7th report I want to talk about is call result percentage by average duration. That's a mouthful, so I'm going to walk you through it. But what it's designed to do is to really answer the question, who are my best reps? What are they doing that makes them so successful? It's a really meaningful report that helps you understand what your reps are doing. And the name of the report is kind of a mouthful, so I'm just going to dig right into what it means and how to read it. Every rep has one of every color square or every call disposition on this graph. So Mark Littlefield, the rep, has one square on the graph for a bad number, one for busy, one for contact, and so forth. The distance from the left to the right is the total percent of all calls that rep placed that were dispositioned in that way. For example, on the 60% line, there's one yellow square for no answer. That indicates that that rep, whoever that might be, 60% of all calls they personally placed were dispositioned to no answer. And then the distance from the bottom to the top indicates the average call duration for those calls. So again, at the 60% line where that yellow no answer is, 60% of all calls that rep placed were no answers, and the average call duration of all their no answers was almost 50 seconds. So that's how you read this report. So every rep has one of every color square on this graph. What you're looking for in any type of scatter plot report is groupings and then outliers out of those groupings. For example, you can see that the contact rate is typically between 20 and 40% for your reps because most of the orange squares fall into that range. But you do see a couple outliers. For example, if you look at the top of that graph, you can see one rep who's placing almost 50% of their calls resulting in a contact, and they have a high call duration. So I'd want to dig into what that rep is doing that's making them have a higher contact rate, and they're talking longer. That's a good outlier. Kind of inversely to that, you can see almost in the far left-hand corner of that graph, you can see one rep who has an orange square there where they only have a 5% contact rate, and they're not talking as much. So maybe that rep is ramping. I can't actually tell you exactly why it's like that, but what we can do is we can use this report to drill in and understand differences between rep performance, understand the reps who are doing well, and understand the reps who are not doing quite as well as they could. So the question is, can your reps do it? Do they understand when they should be calling their prospects based on their prospect's local time to achieve the highest likelihood of a correct contact? Do they know when they should stop calling a lead because that lead is simply not interested? Do they know how many times they should let a phone ring before giving up and moving on to the next prospect? Many companies purchase click-to-call as a solution to help their reps dial more effectively and intelligently. When someone implements click-to-call, what they're really installing is a rep accountability tool, but not an intelligence tool. And there's a key difference there. Reps are just as likely to call someone who won't answer or who is not interested than if they dial with their desk phones. There's no prioritization. There's none of that crunching of all that data for them automatically. Managers get more accountability, and reps get to use a tool that helps them place more phone calls, but it isn't a tool that increases meaningful conversations. And that's really important to understand, is that click-to-call doesn't help your reps prioritize their day. It doesn't tell them which prospects they should be reaching out to. It still leaves that up to the reps. The Power Dialer includes all the accountability tools that traditional click-to-call provides, but adds in the layers of intelligence that organizations are really trying to use so that they can ultimately get to the right people at the right time. The Power Dialer builds on the concept of click-to-call by removing the need for reps to decide who to call and replaces that with intelligent lists that deliver the next best record for a rep to dial. We've seen organizations boost contacts by a considerable amount. Neuralytics analyzes the records in your CRM and determines which records are most likely to answer the phone and to actually purchase your product. This removes the need for reps to spend a lot of time on their lists of records trying just to decide who to call next. We analyze important information such as information about your leads, but also external data points such as weather, stock market information, or even how sports teams winning or losing may affect the probability someone will purchase your services or products. It isn't possible for reps to be effective with their time trying to analyze all this information.
I'd like to thank Mark for jumping on today. He always does such a great job. Loved the presentation around the Salesforce reports and the metrics to help track your reps. Today we have a really cool offer called the Cold Calling Sales Prospecting, a day in the life of a top-performing sales rep download. Continue your sales acceleration. Download this ebook. It's available on the right-hand side in the console. All right, we're going to throw it over to Q&A. I've got Adam Henry here on the line, our Technical Success Manager. So go ahead and just put some questions in the Q&A console, and I'll turn the time over to Adam Henry to start answering those.
Hey, thanks, Mark and Mike. I feel like that was pretty informative information, well compiled. This is Adam Henry. I also have with myself here today Kyle Winder. He's been a part of the customer success team as well for a couple years now, and then he's also handling a lot of our BI stuff, I believe, right, Kyle? Yeah. So we're going to kind of go through and answer some of the questions that we've had today. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, feel free to pipe up. Just let us know, and we'll kind of go through some of these here real quick. One question, or I guess really a comment that we had brought up was by Jacqueline at Crimson Hexagon, when Mark was discussing how if you're focused in on dials, that can kind of create some bad behaviors. And at their office, they have a lot of reps that end up specifically targeting phone numbers where they would only get voicemails, so they can kind of get their numbers up. I think that's a really good point and insight. I guess one response I would have to that would be maybe those reps have more access or more abilities than they should. Personally, I don't know if I would let them, have access to pull up individual numbers like that. It sounds like those reps should be focused on a list. If those reps were basically living in the power dialer or spending their day-to-day in the seek list, then that might help avoid having them, searching out those numbers where they know that they can get those voicemails. And probably what they're doing is, keeping a record of those somewhere and just focusing and calling those to get those numbers up. So that might be something that you could do, is just make sure they're on a seek list or at least a domino list, and kind of keeping track of their work efforts through that list. Do you have any thoughts to add to that, Kyle?
No, not on that one. I thought it was just interesting that she kind of just helped us, see that is actually the case, where that's actually happening, where reps are just gaming the system and trying to get their bonus based on, dials or something. So thanks for that.
Yeah. Jacqueline also just asked what a domino list is. So yeah, in at least within our product Inside Sales, we have two types of lists that we focus on. One is a seek list. That's a dynamic list that refreshes every hour, pulls in new information. A domino list is basically a one and done list, A through Z. So it's similar to pulling up a list view in Salesforce, creating that list view and then dialing through that list. So managers potentially could be creating those lists for the reps. You could give them access to build their own list. So again, something that's kind of up to manager discretion there.
So one of the questions I'm seeing kind of trend is, whether you have to have InsideSales.com products in order to run these reports, or whether you can, build these in Salesforce. It's kind of two parts. First of all, as a part of our product, we created these reports, and so that they're available when you download our product. And our product also helps you track the data that we're using to build the reports. However, it's not necessary. If you can gather the data through other means, through whatever telephony system you have or any other way, and you can get it in Salesforce, then the principles apply. You can build these types of reports in Salesforce. But as always, the reports are all about the data, so you just need to make sure that you can gather it. If you can't, then you need to come up with a strategy on how to collect the data, and then again, you can run these reports in Salesforce just based on the principles. So, dials per day or contacts per day, come up with a way of measuring those in Salesforce, and then you can build those reports in Salesforce.
Yeah. Thanks, Kyle. I've seen a question come up 2 or 3 times now about where you can find those reports. So yeah, if you have our package installed, you go to your reports tab in Salesforce. You'll see a folder in there called Sales Acceleration. That's where we have all those reports available to you. So it should be titled Sales Acceleration and then Installed Packages. So you should see that in there with all the reports that Mark went over today available to you there. You can customize them, use the Save As function if you kind of want to make a clone of it and modify those reports. Like Kyle was saying, you can definitely build similar reports on your own without our installed package. Obviously, the benefit is we've already done the hard work for you. We do have additional fields that we're tracking that are custom fields that are, not traditionally set up in most people's Salesforce. So that's another thing that you would get when you install our package is, like I said, those additional fields that we'll be, monitoring to pull data from. Okay, so we have a question from Simon at Me Inc. He said, hey, this is mainly based around phone KPIs. How do you track email effectiveness? What we do, at least internally here, again, we use our own products. We have a tool called Vision that is an email tracking tool. And with that tool, we also have something called Absolute Automation that then syncs all of the, sent and received emails back into Salesforce and onto the record. So we actually create, again, some custom fields on the record itself. And we, again, have an installed package report that will track the interactions with those emails. So we'll track number of emails being sent by a rep each day. I think you can break it down by hour. We can track things like which emails are being opened, which templates are being opened, attachments being downloaded. So yeah, basically everything that ties back into how we track emails is just using our own Vision tool. And like I said, the Absolute Automation piece that ties into syncing those emails into Salesforce.
Yeah, and another few questions that, there were questions about email tracking or reporting, and then also inbound. So yeah, this presentation was kind of focused on outbound dialing, but it definitely gets your hopefully your thought gears going about what types of things you can report on for inbound, for instance. And again, with our product, we do have, as Adam mentioned, several of these custom fields that we put in there to start collecting inbound call data. And just as I mentioned before, if you can collect the data and you have it in Salesforce, then you can build whatever reports you want to around that data. But so yeah, inbound reporting, things like whether the phone was even was answered in time, as you talk about inbound queues. How many times it failed over, what the average waiting duration is for someone that calls inbound. And then you can do the same thing, whether you were talking to a decision maker, you can kind of disposition the call for inbound calls as well. So yeah, email tracking, inbound calls, outbound calls, it's really all about the data that you can collect. And again, that's just one of the strengths of our product, is that we help you collect the data and get it into Salesforce.
Yeah, I think we've pretty much answered the majority of the questions that came in. I'm not seeing any more new questions here. So thanks again to everyone who participated today. As always, if you have issues, you can reach out to our support team, who's available to answer any technical or questions regarding the product. You can also reach out to your customer success manager if you have further questions regarding how to set up these reports, look at these reports. You can always reach out to them as well. But yeah, again, thanks for everyone for joining, and we'll talk to you again soon.